Hello there, this is of course Dr. Jimmy, for the first time in quite a while coming back to YouTube to try to do something about Halloween Horror Nights. Now, you're probably wondering why, after the last one I did, it took a while before I came back to do any sort of updates about what was happening with the upcoming event of Halloween Horror Nights 21. Well, let me tell you, there were a couple of reasons, one of which is that updates kept coming so fast and furious. Adjusting his glasses are cool, by the way. Got the doctor's endorsement last night. Anyway, getting back to it, yeah, there were so many updates happening, so much information was coming so fast and furious in the few days before the big site reveal, with the official confirmation of all the houses and zones and etc., that by the time I would do an update, it would be too late because the information would have changed. And so that was part of it. But there was another reason, a bigger reason. See, when the big reveal happened on that night a couple weeks ago, I wasn't very surprised by a lot of the information that was given, because I knew pretty much all of it, about 99% of what was to be revealed ahead of time from my various sources. I've gotten more information about the event this year than I ever have in the past ahead of time, and I was afraid that I might slip and say something I shouldn't on the video, which would spoil something that would be revealed later on, especially near the end, when some people who were playing who were the first 21 people to respond to a thing on the Facebook page, got an invitation to be early recipients of information. We're only about a half hour early, as it turned out, maybe around 11:30 or something on that night before, I think it was Tuesday the 30th or something like that, wasn't it? Tuesday the Tuesday the 29th, or whatever night it was, before the midnight August 31st reveal. I guess it was, yes, Thursday the 30th, before the midnight and early Wednesday morning August 31st reveal of the website for the general public. Therefore, I didn't want to, I didn't know when that was going to happen, but I knew it would be earlier, and I didn't want anyone to, you know, these people earn the right to learn some stuff, and to spoil that beforehand would be really naughty, and would take away from their winnings. And I'm a fair person, I don't like doing things like that. The only big surprise for me was about the show. I knew very little about the new show, except that I had heard rumors about a parade, and except it wasn't going to be a big float parade, but more like a processional parade of some sort. As it turns out, that was Death Drums, which would be a show presented on a stage, apparently, in New York area, where the Blues Brothers normally perform. Apparently, that will be the location. There will be 3 different shows, and the procession will come from different times, and there'll be different shows. There will be a procession, though, sort of like a mini parade, going to that area probably from Hollywood, where there's a gate next to the makeup show, and it'll go through the Mel's Diner area up around the lagoon to where the setup is. So there'll be, and there might even be a few small miniature floats, I don't know. So there'll be a little bit of a sort of thing there, the closest to a parade we've had since 2004. But there'll be 3 different versions of the show, so it'll be quite exciting to see a lot of new, different, change up. The whole idea, Halloween Horror Nights 21, is your experience to be different every time. A concept they originally had back in 2005 for the Fate scenario they were going to use at Universal Studios Florida if they were going to have the event there that year, and they decided no, they're going to use the other scenario for Islands of Adventure, which was Darkness, and that changed to Terra Quentis and the Terra Queen, and then the Storyteller was added on after that, so there was a lot of changes that year. But the Fate concept was reworked into Lady Luck for this year. And the other big surprise for me is that I was really expecting some sort of scare zone in the Lucy area based on stuff we had heard, and it doesn't seem to be anything announced for that area. And they may still use that for an unofficial, not officially listed scare zone sort of thing, as has happened all the time in recent years. You know, we've had a lot of unofficial scare zones. Most recently, last year, the unofficial Chainsaw Drill Team scare zone, which was added in the New York Plaza of the Stars area last year. And so you can always expect to see something a little extra here and there sometimes, so that could be what the Lucy area is going to be used for. We'll have to wait and see. But enough about Halloween Horror Nights 21. We'll know more about that next week. Yes, it's next week! Isn't that exciting? When the event starts next week, Friday. But in the meantime, I'm going to talk about the past, because this is actually a video of my Halloween Horror Nights history series as I come up to Halloween Horror Nights 17, the Carnival of Carnage in 2007. What a wonderful year that was. For many people, it's one of their favorite years. I know a lot of the younger people who may have started going to Halloween Horror Nights that year, and for a lot of people that represented a definitive moment for them, and they judge the current events based on that. I myself have been around a hell of a lot longer, and it was a good year, but some people had problems with it as well. But it was an important year for me because it was the year that I really joined the online fandom, among other things. Well, let's get into it then. Halloween Horror Nights 17, the Carnival of Carnage, was held at Universal Studios Florida for the second year since it moved back there in 2006. It was held on the evenings of September 28th and 29th and October 4th, 5th, 6th and 7th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 18, 19, 20, 21, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, and the 31st Halloween night, and November 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. It was the first time the event went from September to November. You know, we had some that had included September and then gone into October, and some that started in October went into November. We never had anyone that encompassed all 3 months before. I don't know if we've ever done that since. I'll have to double check. But it was certainly the most nights of any Halloween Horror Nights at that time. The previous ones had been like 18 or 19 nights, and then earlier around 2003 it went up to 21 nights, but then it went back down into the teens for a few years. So this was the largest Halloween Horror Nights in years, over 20 nights. It was 23 nights. It was incredible, 23 nights, and covered, you know, all of October, but also bits of September and November as well. So it was huge scope of time. It's like, oh my goodness. There were 8 houses that year for the first time. You know, we'd had up to 7 houses prior to this, but now 8 houses. My goodness, they upped the number of houses. And 4 shows, amazingly enough, and 1 scare zone. 1 scare zone? That doesn't make any sense. Only 1. Well, actually, there were 4 scare zones, but officially there was 1 scare zone. Remember I talked about unofficial scare zones? Well, yeah, there was officially 1 scare zone, but unofficially there were actually 4. All right. It was pretty amazing. Well, we all got excited about Halloween Horror Nights pretty early in the year, in May, of course, when we started to get the first website changes, because we'd had the old website from Sweet 16 up for a while, and then all of a sudden on May 17th of 2007, the old archive site, remember with the drawers that we had, came back. You know, instead of the old Sweet, it was that archive, and that was the only thing there, was the teaser. Okay, but why was it the archives again? Well, this time there was an extra drawer. That is to say, there was a drawer for 2006 that had all the material in it that we saw before, but that came back. And so it was like, okay, this will give us a little more detailed idea of what happened in 2006. So we had all of that there, and we're waiting to see what would happen. Well, it was about more than a month later that it happened. It had already been announced, however, in the press a couple of times before the teaser changed, and that was that there had been an arrangement with Universal Studios and New Line Cinema, which of course was actually a part of the whole Time Warner. Even back then it was part of the Time Warner thing, although it hadn't officially been subsumed into Warner Brothers the way it has now, but back then it was a part of that. New Line Cinema was a company that was started way back in the 80s, independent of the Time Warner thing. There was I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but he's been an actor and a director and a producer. I'll have to go look it up, but he was a person who kind of founded it, and it was a floundering company for a couple of years until 1984. They had a little hit film called A Nightmare on Elm Street. And a lot of people say at New Line Cinema was the house that Freddy built, because of, although that was a flop in the box office, it became a hit on home video, and was such a success on home video and on cable television that a sequel came out the very next year, Nightmare 2: Freddy's Revenge, which did much better in the box office. And then the third film that came out a little bit after that, a couple years later, I think it was 86, 87, Dream Warriors, not 3, was a huge success because Freddy had become this cult phenomenon. And from that point on, Freddy, was the big money maker. Sometime after that, they acquired the rights to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and eventually the Friday the 13th franchise as well, which had originally been other places. Texas Chainsaw, some independent distributor had it for a while, but then the New Line got it, and the Jason Friday the 13th had actually been a Paramount production. The first 8 films released by Paramount, and apparently Michael Eisner, who was running Paramount before he went to Disney, was kind of ashamed of it and didn't promote it as much as he should, especially in the later years, even though he knew it always made money for Paramount. And there was a whole lot of crap with controversy about it, especially in the early years. But what happened was that they decided not to make any more Friday the 13th films, and New Line picked it up in the early 90s. And that, of course, led the possibility that Freddy and Jason would meet someday. It took over 10 years before that happened, finally, in the early 21st century, when they had Freddy versus Jason. And that had all happened before 2007, so the idea of having Freddy, Jason, and Leatherface would all be at the event. And this time, they'd appeared before, of course, especially in the mid-90s. They'd be in little houses here and there, like the Museum of Horror, New House of Horror, where they would be on the new slasher side, as opposed to the Universal Classic side of those double 2-run houses. And then, of course, they also had all 3 of them appeared in the all-night die-in, the first all-night die-in back in 2003, but they were done in sort of an unofficial way because Universal didn't have the rights to them. Well, this year they really had the rights to use the characters officially, and they announced this, and it's on the website on June 27th, with big posters of all 3 characters in a sort of a circus carnival attraction, like it was part of a sideshow, which gave it a hint of what was coming up, but we didn't really know for sure. But we saw those 3 posters, and we knew those 3 New Line Cinema now-owned characters would appear officially in their own haunted houses. For the very first time, each one of those big 3 New Line Cinema characters would have their own haunted house, all to themselves, themed to their movies. That was exciting. What we didn't know is that originally the plan was to have Freddy them to appear together. There was going to be a show with all 3 characters involved, and Freddy versus Jason was the idea because the popular movie. Freddy and Jason would be fighting and would appear in a house together, and based on Freddy versus Jason, and there would be all sorts of scare zones and shows featuring these around the park. A really elaborate concept they had worked up. New Line Cinema then said, as part of their agreement, though, insisted that the 3 could not appear together except in promotions, like on the website we have the 3 in different posters, and of course in the television commercial that came out eventually where you saw the 3 characters. But they couldn't appear in the park together. And that made a problem, because now you had to have 3 separate houses that were, and you have to have them, and you took away the idea of any kind of Freddy versus Jason house or any kind of appearing in shows or scare zones together. They couldn't do that anymore, so they had to find something else. And of course they had to come up with an idea that would bind the whole event together, and the idea was with their most popular character, of course, Jack the Clown, to make it a carnival of carnage, and these would be parts of his exhibits, his sideshow of like a freak show, but it would feature these horrible creatures as part of his traveling carnival. But we didn't know that yet in June, because we only saw the 3 posters. But it was exciting to know that. Shortly after that, New Line's most recent horror film, Dead Silence, which was coming out on video very soon at that time, and DVD, having been in movies in cinemas the year before, and having been modestly successful, Dead Silence with Mary Shaw was also promoted on the website. Yes, there'll be a house for Mary Shaw as well. So now, okay, there's going to be 4 haunted houses based on these New Line Cinema horror creatures, 3 big ones, and of course Mary Shaw added in as number 4. So that was what we were expecting. And I've already started to run out of time for this first video, so it looks like we're going to have a number of videos for Halloween Horror Nights 17, but are you surprised?